Hello again, everyone. Welcome to Washington Gun Law TV. I am Washington Gun Law President William Kirk. Thanks for joining us. Hey, this is a video that I should not really have to be doing. I thought that months and months ago, when we were done with all of these videos, that we were finally done talking about Operation Reticent Recall. But you see, all of that has changed because last week, I started getting phone calls from a lot of lawful and responsible gun owners like yourself who were suddenly getting nasty little letters from the ATF. What's going on? Well, if we go back and we take a look at what we talked about the first go around, we know that there were people who fell into one of three categories. And really, if you only fell into one category, were you likely to have to deal with the ATF? But all of that maybe have changed now. And based upon the people I've spoken to around the country and the letters that we're receiving, I think we need to now have yet another discussion about triggers. So today, let's spend a few minutes and talk about, yes, the ATF is now coming after the wide open trigger and what you should do. Okay, so the issue we are talking about today, again, is Operation Reticent Recall, or whatever the hell they are calling it now, Operation Total Recall, Operation Reticent Recall Part 2, I don't know. However, what this deals with now is the wide open trigger. Now, let's just go back in our time machine for a minute to get everybody up to speed. As we know, there was both solvent traps, one that I was not a real big fan of, as well as forced reset triggers, the ones that were produced by a company known as Rare Breed, that were highly popular late 2020 and throughout the summer of 2021. Many lawful and responsible gun owners went out and purchased those items because, well, in fact, they were lawful to purchase. Fast forward to 2022, however, the ATF suddenly does a complete about face on both forced reset triggers as well as some solvent traps, and suddenly they go on a big nationwide scavenger hunt, freaking the hell out of lawful and responsible gun owners nationwide with nasty little letters and occasionally unannounced visits. That led to video after video after video trying to help quell some of the panic. And fortunately, we were able to work with many of you throughout the entire country to resolve these issues. Now, back last year, when we were dealing with triggers the first time, what we were primarily dealing with was the Rare Breed FRT-15, the forced reset trigger, and primarily we were dealing with individuals who had purchased those triggers on Gunbroker. Now, to refresh your memory, the technical similarities between a forced reset trigger by Rare Breed and a wide open trigger sold by Big Daddy is so similar that let us not forget that Rare Breed actually sued Big Daddy for a patent infringement on that trigger technology. Of course, the purpose of this video is not to get into the pissing contest between Big Daddy and Rare Breed, but it is to point out even the manufacturers believe this technology was literally identical. Well, I can assure you, so does the ATF. Now, I know some of you are going to start asking down before, what about the Hellfire Trigger? Because yes, we have done letters on the Hellfire Trigger, and to this date, I have only spoken to one individual who had purchased a Hellfire Trigger, and that was purchased on Gunbroker. Now, here's what's going on with the wide open trigger, and this is what I want you to be aware of. Now, for those of you who I had the chance to speak to last year when all of the freak out was going on over this, you will recall that people really fell into one of three categories. There were those individuals who had purchased now prohibited items from Big Daddy, and prior to the making of this video, not a single person had ever been contacted by the ATF. There were those who had purchased now prohibited items, primarily FRT-15 triggers from Rare Breed directly, and we only found that about 10% of those individuals ever received correspondence from the ATF. A large majority of the people we spoke to purchased a now prohibited item from Gunbroker, and in all instances they were contacted or had already been contacted by the ATF. So prior to the recording of this video, I had told many of you that if you had purchased directly from Big Daddy, there was literally a 0% chance based upon what I had experienced that you were going to be contacted by the ATF. However, last week I fielded not one, not two, but three separate phone calls from individuals, one in Florida, one in California, and one in Arizona. What did all three of them have in common? Well, sometime in the summer of 2021, they purchased the wide open trigger directly from Big Daddy. The ATF in each of those instances had now sent them a letter almost identical to the verbiage that we saw in the initial Operation Reticent Recall emails, okay? And in all three of those instances, those individuals had in fact purchased a wide open trigger during the time frame that ATF claimed that they did. Now, I want to make this disclosure here. I am in no way suggesting that the folks over at Big Daddy have cooperated with the ATF. As a matter of fact, I am quite confident that it has been exactly the opposite. I think that if Big Daddy had been willing to cooperate with the ATF or had been compelled into cooperating with the ATF, these letters would have gone out months and months ago when everyone else was getting the first wave of those letters. Let us not forget that there are many shipping companies that would be involved in the commerce here, some of which, you know which ones I'm talking about, have already demonstrated their willingness to work with the gun-grabbing left. So where this data came from, how the ATF obtained that data, we're going to have to continue to look into. But they clearly now are in possession of data, valid data, that is going to be able to connect the sale of wide open triggers, which they now characterize as unlawful machine guns in violation of the National Firearms Act. And they're going to be able to start connecting the sale of those items to the purchaser, which may be you, the lawful and responsible gun owner somewhere in this country. Okay, now that we got everyone worked up, everyone take a big deep breath. Okay, and we're going to talk about what you can do, because listen, you may want to start getting out in front of this, and so I'm just going to give you some very objective advice based upon certain criteria about what you can and cannot do. Okay, you're going to fall into one of three categories here. Number one, you do in fact have possession of one of these triggers, and the ATF has already sent you a letter. If you fall into that category, number one, if it's in a firearm, it should be removed from the firearm immediately. However, since ATF has already sent you a letter, nothing further should be done with that item. Okay, let me repeat that. Since ATF has already sent you a letter, nothing further should be done with that item. If you start cutting that item up, you have been placed on written notice by the federal government that may have evidentiary value. So to destroy it, post notification from the ATF, please understand, you may do so at your own peril. But if you do fall into that category, that you have possession of one of these and you have been contacted by ATF, you've received a letter, you need to contact counsel right away, whether that is us or someone locally. There are many, many attorneys who can assist you with this. We are not claiming for 1 second that Washington Gun Law is the only law firm in the country that can handle this, and obviously we cannot handle that sort of volume. If you need to contact Washington Gun Law to get local referrals, obviously we will help you out. Okay, now you may also fall into this category. I have one of these triggers, but at the current time, I have no correspondence from the ATF. Okay, what I would suggest you do, okay, this is my suggestion, is if it's in a firearm, it needs to come out of the firearm. Since it is your property, since you have every right to do whatever you want to with your property, and because ATF has not sent you a letter placing you on potential notice that it may have evidentiary value, you are entitled to destroy it. And candidly, I think it should be destroyed. Now, you can check out this video, and it's pretty obvious to figure out how you can, in fact, destroy these triggers. But this is important. This is really important. If you are going to take this trigger out of a firearm, or if you're going to take this trigger out of the packaging and cut it up and destroy it, I highly recommend that you secure video and photographic evidence of the destruction. Why do I suggest that? Well, my experience has been in instances, and there has been nearly 100 of these, where individuals were able to photo and video document the destruction of that trigger, and then we were able to provide that digital data to the ATF. That satisfied that investigation. We usually received a 3400.23 on behalf of the original owner. We didn't sign anything, and that concluded the investigation. So if you are going to now engage in the act of destroying that trigger, I highly recommend that you capture it with digital evidence, and I also recommend that you store it, you back it up, and if you need to contact Washington Gun Law or another lawyer to have them digitally store it for you, securely store it for you, that may be a wise idea as well. The final category is you may have already seen the writing on the wall. You may have gotten freaked out the first time around. You did take the thing out. You did cut it up. You got rid of it. It's gone. And at this point, You just have no evidence of that. You cut it up months ago and threw it out. What do you do in that situation? Well, listen, in those situations, the ATF has required you to sign a declaration under penalty of perjury. What do I recommend you do if you fall into that category? I recommend you contact local counsel, get counsel on board, so in the event that ATF does contact you, you will have counsel assist you with what decisions is made about filling out that declaration and what language is used. Because you have to remember that if you make a misstatement, okay, that can be deemed as lying to a federal agent and get you in a whole lot more trouble than you're already in. And candidly, right now, and I do mean this with all sincerity, of all the individuals that I have worked with around the country, and there has been nearly 100 in almost every single state, there has not been a single instance of one of those individuals being arrested or indicted yet. I can assure you if that happened, I can absolutely assure you if that happened, I would have done a video within 10 minutes of that occurring. Listen, we got a bloodbath of a legislative session going on here in Washington State. We got the pistol brace rule going on. We got a lot of moving pieces here. There's going to be a lot of people doing videos on this, and so there's going to be a lot of resources. As we begin to learn more, as we begin to understand better, we will continue to do videos to get you up to speed on what's happening and what you can do to get out in front of it if you so desire. In the meantime, if you got any questions about this or anything else related to what's left of our Second Amendment rights, you guys should know how to get a hold of Washington gun law by now. But if you don't, hey, all of that information is down there in the description box. In the meantime, we want you all to remember that part of being the lawful and responsible gun owner, like we talk about all the time here, is to know what the law is in every situation and how it applies to you in any instance that you may find yourself. Until next time, thanks for watching and stay safe.